Hello everyone and welcome to this Ruby on Rails tutorial targeted for absolute beginners. In this video I'm going to break down everything as simply as I know how to break it down. First I'll show you how to install Rails, then I'll tell you everything about it and break it down as simply as possible. By the end of this video you're going to have a working app with user authentication and post scaffold. This video is for absolute beginners, so keep that in mind. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Maliki and in this video we're going to install Ruby on Rails on Windows. We are going to be using a Linux subsystem for this. I believe it's the best and the fastest way to run Ruby on Rails on Windows. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is click the Windows button and then we're going to go into search and we're going to search turn Windows features on or off. So turn Windows features on or off. We're going to click on this and then there are three folders that we're going to have to enable. The first one is Windows subsystem for Linux. This is going to install some packages that makes it easier to have a subsystem for Linux on Windows. Then we're going to need the Windows hypervisor platform and the virtual machine platform. Then click OK. And then you're going to have to restart your computer to install the required files. So I'm going to restart my computer and then I'll see you after it's restarted. Okay, so I've just restarted my computer. And now the next step that we're going to follow is we're going to search again and we're going to go to the Microsoft Store. So search up Microsoft Store and we're going to go to Microsoft Store. And then once you're inside of here, although it takes forever to load because it's not a very good store, I'll tell you that. We're going to search up Ubuntu. Whoops. We're going to search up Ubuntu. And we want to get the LTS version. We don't want to get the normal version, we want to get the LTS version. So right now it's version 22.04.3 and I have it already. So I'm going to click open, but for you need to click install. Then once that is completely installed, what you need to do is next go to the Windows terminal. This is just a Windows terminal. It's really much better than command prompt, has lots of features. I'll show you it now. So we're going to go here to Windows terminal. I'm going to click open. Obviously you're going to have to install it, and this is what the Windows terminal looks like. You can open up your command prompt PowerShell Ubuntu. It has settings to change the colors and things like that. And so yeah, the Windows terminal is pretty good. And then we're going to open up the Windows terminal and we're going to go into command prompt and we're going to run this command, wsl.exe update. Hit enter. And then this is going to install the Windows subsystem for Linux. This is because I was getting this error, WSL2 requires an update to its kernel component. If you didn't get this error, then you do not have to run this command, but it's just in my case I was getting this error. So we're going to wait for this command to finish and then I'll see you when it's done. As you can see now it says Windows subsystem for Linux has been installed. So what I'm going to do is open my Ubuntu. I'm going to see what this says. And as you can see now I'm in an instance of Ubuntu. And so the next thing that we're going to do is install Ruby on Rails on Ubuntu. So I'm going to go and search up the DigitalOcean guide. And I'll have a link to this guide in the description. And essentially what we're going to do is follow every command. So I'm going to copy this command, sudo apt update. And it's giving me the password. So I'm going to have to enter my password. So that command has ran. And now next we have to install the dependencies required to install Ruby. So I'm going to hit copy, paste and enter, then yes. Then we're going to run the next command. All done. Then the next one. And essentially we just want to run every single command here. Here's another one. And as you can see, I ran this type rbnv command and we're getting the correct output, so that's correctly installed. And then we're going to install Ruby with Ruby build. So let's do that. Run this command. And that just lists all the available versions of Ruby. So in this guide they're saying we should install Ruby 2.7.6, but I want to install the newest version of Ruby, so we're going to install Ruby install rbenv install Ruby 3.3.0. But you install whichever version of Ruby you want. I recommend the newest one. And now it's installing this version of Ruby. Installing Ruby can be a lengthy process, so be prepared for the installation to take some time to complete. Okay, now that Ruby is installed, Ruby 3.3, we're going to install Rails. So let's run gem install Rails. And so now it just installed Rails for me. And just to check that they're both successfully installed, you need to make sure to run ruby-v, which gives us our Ruby version, and rails-v. This is a different Ruby version to the one I just installed. This is the one I previously had installed, but as long as it displays some sort of version that's relatively new, you're going to be okay. I'm not sure why it didn't update this current version of Ruby to the new one, but I'll figure that out a different day. As long as you have Ruby installed and Rails installed, it's all good. And so the next thing that we're going to do is install Git. So I'm going to search up Git for Windows, download this one, download, and it's downloading Git for Windows. If you don't know what Git is a version control software that allows us to push our code up to and back it up to sources like GitHub. So I'm going to double click on this file and then we're going to install Git. Okay, and now we have Git installed, so that's good. And the next thing that we're going to install is Node.js. So we're going to install Node.js. So it's the same process. We're going to say Node.js download, but in this case we're going to install it on Ubuntu. So we're going to use the command sudo apt install node.js. Enter the password. Yes. And then it's installing node.js. Okay. So now it's successfully installed node.js. And so now we have Git, Ruby, Rails, and node.js. So we should technically be able to start a Rails application and things should work. But there's a couple more things that we need. So what we need, obviously, a code editor like VS Code, PostgreSQL, and then we should be good to go. So I'm going to download VS Code. So let's go and install VS Code. So I'm just going to search up VS Code for Windows. I'm sure you know how to do this, but just making this as comprehensive as it can be. And then we're just going to install VS Code. So double click it and install it. And then while that's installing, I'm going to go online in the browser and I'm going to search up PostgreSQL install for Ubuntu. And then I'm going to copy this command, go here, hit enter, and then hit yes. So now we should be installing PostgreSQL. I do like to install it on Windows as it gives me a package called pgadmin4, which is basically a GUI that allows me to use PostgreSQL but with a program or a window. So it makes it way easier to use PostgreSQL instead of typing commands for everything. But now that we have PostgreSQL installed, I'm going to hit clear. And we're going to create a new directory. So I'm going to go make directory, Rails projects, enter. Then we're going to go cd Rails projects. And then we're going to run a Rails command. We're going to create a project. We're going to say Rails new first Linux test, enter. And we should be creating the Rails project. And here we go. As you can see, Rails is successfully working. But let's just wait until we actually run the Rails server and see if it works. And so that command is successfully run. And now I'm going to run code dot. And it did not work. Right, so after restarting my computer, I was actually able to run the command code dot. So now I'll just cd into that directory. So I'll go cd, and then I'll go cd Rails projects, and then I'll go cd fist Linux test because I spelt it wrong. And then we can do Rails s. Or first we can do code dot, and then we can do Rails s. And as you can see, I'll just control left click on this link and it takes us to the Rails page, everything working, Rails version, Ruby version. This means that Ruby on Rails has been successfully installed. While we haven't set up Postgres with this particular project, I'll show you how to do that in a future video. If you liked this video or found it helpful, please subscribe, like the video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.
Okay guys, now that you got Rails installed, let me just show you my Rails version. I'm using Rails 8.0.2. My Ruby version is 3.4.4. If you're not using the exact Rails or Ruby version as me, don't worry about it, it's not that important for this video because we're not going to be using features that require version 8. If you're using version 7 or version 9 when it comes out. Don't worry, that's fine. It's going to work. Alright guys, so the first thing I'm going to do is run ls, and pretty much ls gives us a list of all of the directories inside of this directory. So I'm going to go cd into YouTube. That pretty much means change directory into YouTube. So I'm going to go into directory YouTube. I'm going to hit enter and it brings me into YouTube. And then I'm going to run a new command. So we're going to say clear. That's just going to clear the terminal. And then inside of here, what we can do is we can say Rails new, and I'm going to say beginner. And then pretty much this is going to create a new Rails application, possibly your first new Rails application, and it's going to be called beginner. And all we have to do is hit enter, and then it's going to create a bunch of files and folders, and it's going to take about a minute or two to actually create. So we can hit enter. Sometimes people specify their database here or any extra tools that they want, but for this absolutely beginner tutorial, we don't need to do that. So hit enter. Okay, now that our app is finished creating, what we can do, first I'll run clear so you can see what I'm doing. I'll run cd beginner. Again, cd stands for change directory. Now that we have a fresh Rails app, what we can do is run Rails S. Rails S stands for Rails server, and this makes us that our server starts and we can view our application inside of the browser. So then as you can see, it says booting Puma, which is kind of like this tool that manages the server. And it says Puma is booting in single mode with our Ruby version and our Puma version. As you can see, the PID. The PID is kind of like the ID of Puma. And as you can see, it says listening on http://127.0.0.1 port 3000. So what this means is that we can left click and control left click on this link, and it'll bring us in the browser to the actual Rails server. Or what we can do is we can go in our browser and we can search up localhost port 3000, which is localhost:3000. And if you get this screen, that means that your Rails setup is completely correct, and it displays your Rails, Rack, and Ruby version down here. And if we go back to the server, as you can see, we get some new purple and white lines, and let's just see what it's saying. So it's pretty much just saying create table for schema migrations, which is to do with the database, and then it says processed by Rails welcome controller #index as HTML. So pretty much this is what I'm going to get into next. As you can see, we haven't actually opened up our application yet in Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to stop the server using Control-C, and then I'm going to open up the application in Visual Studio Code using code dot. If you don't have Visual Studio Code installed, you can install it online or via the Microsoft Store, but yeah, definitely get VS Code. VS Code is very, very good, especially for beginners. So now that we have our code inside of here, I'm just going to explain what's actually going on. So as you saw on the terminal before, it says processed by Rails welcome controller #index. That's because every page in Rails is processed by a controller, and then the controller sends that information back to the view. And the view is kind of like where we have our actual HTML files. So if we go to app views, we have our views here, and we have our application view, our mailers, and our PWA. We haven't actually got any views yet because this is obviously a fresh app. But how this MVC framework works is MVC stands for Model View Controller. The controller and the view kind of have this two-way relationship of sending data. So for example, when a user submits a form on a website and they say they sign up with their email and their password, then they send the information to the controller, and the controller will then store that information in a model, and then the controller will then return back to the user their signed in state. So that's essentially the Model View Controller. So when people say Rails is an MVC framework, that's what they mean. Now, as you can see in Rails, we have a bunch of files here, and what I want you to do is really not to be stressed. It really doesn't matter. Don't worry, we're only going to be working in a couple of these files, but you'll get to know all of them as you get better at working with Rails. Like, even I don't really know or have never worked with like vendor. Like, what the fuck is vendor? I have no idea. Anyway, don't worry about that. So the files that actually are important are controllers, the views, the models. So those are the main files that are really, really, really important. But also other important files are your DB, and we haven't actually got it yet, but it's called schema.rb. Once we create our post scaffold, you'll have a schema.rb because that's essentially a representation of the database. So we'll get into that more in a second. And so your views are pretty much where you have your HTML files. Your controllers are where you have your actual Ruby code that handles the logic, because Ruby is the programming language for Rails. And your models are where you have your essentially layers for actually storing the data and defining how it should be stored. So for example, we can have a user model, we can have a post model. In configuration, we have some configuration files. We have different files for like development.rb or production.rb. We have our routes, which is a very important file where we define how our views actually link to our controllers. So as you can see here, we say route post #index. And pretty much what this means is go go to the post hashtag index, so the post controller and the index method of the post controller, so that when we go to port 3000 of our application, it's actually automatically going there because we set the root there. Obviously, we have this commented out right now with a hashtag. If we remove the hashtag, then it won't be commented out, but we'll keep the hashtag there for now. That's the root.rb file. The public.rb file houses some of the errors you'll see. So for example, a 400 error, the server cannot process request due to the client error, the 404, the 406, the 422, the 500. And the gem file, also quite an important file. This is where we add our packages. So any gems that we're going to be installing, which are essentially just Rails packages, we're going to be installing here. So we just add it in here and then we run bundle install. Alright guys, so that's pretty much the lowdown on the Rails file structure and everything that's going on here, or at least everything important. I know I didn't cover like 70% of all of the folders here, but you don't need to worry about that because this is a beginner's tutorial. So guys, now that we got that done, what we're going to go back to the terminal. Then inside of here, what we're going to do is run a command. So the first command that you're going to run inside of your Rails app is called Rails G scaffold. And then we're going to say post, and we're going to say title colon string and body colon text. Now let me just kind of break down what's actually happening here. Then we say G, and G stands for generate. So that means we're going to create something. So a scaffold. Now a scaffold is kind of the basis for a lot of things, but essentially what it means is that you can create, read, update, and destroy a model. So that means that for the post model, because we're creating a scaffold for the post model, we're going to be able to create, read, update, and destroy it. And because we're creating a scaffold, Rails is going to include as much as possible in order to do that. So it's going to create the controller, the view, and we're literally going to be able to do it in the application after this command. And then the post is the name of the model. So essentially we're just going to be creating posts. We could change that to something like, I don't know, creating languages or creating comments or whatever. And then these title and body, they're the attributes of the actual post itself. So there's our columns in the database table. So they're the attributes of the post itself. So for example, on YouTube, you have a description for the videos, you have a title for the videos. This is essentially these attributes. And then when you say string and text, these are the actual types of these attributes. So for example, in programming, we have strings, floats, integers, and whatnot. So essentially string is like basically just any text or any number. A string can pretty much be anything. And then the reason that the body is text is because we only want to allow text. If we enter on this command, it's going to create a bunch of folders and files. As you can see, we can just go through exactly what it created. So it created a migration. And a migration is a file that's going to change the schema.rb, which again we'll get into once we run our next command. And then it created a model, which again is a layer to actually define how the layer of the database should be run. So it's like a post model. We got a test model, we got a test unit, we got a post.yaml, we got a resources root, so we changed the roots file. Then we added a post controller, then we added like 6 views. And as you can see, we're using .html.erb, and this is the file extension for the actual Rails files. We've got a post test controller, we've got a post test, we've got a post helper, and we got some JSON builders. So as you can see, we can go back to our application and let's just verify that those files were created. So we can go to views, and now we have a new folder here called posts, and we have all of these views inside of the posts. So we have a form, we have an index, we have an edit, we have an underscore post, we have a new, and we have a show. So again, this is what I was talking about with the CRUD operations. So essentially we're going to be able to add CRUD to our application, and we're going to be able to create, read, update, and destroy these posts. It also created a post controller. So if we go to the post controller, as you can see, we already have 70 lines of code in here. And if we go to model, we have a post model as well. But there's nothing in here apart from class post, but you do need this. Anyway guys, so now let's go back to the terminal, run clear so you can see what I'm doing. And we're going to run another command called Rails DB migrate. So what this command is going to do is essentially migrate the migration to the database. So what does that actually mean? Well, if we go to DB and migrate the migrate folder, as you can see, this is the migration that we're going to essentially put in the database. So whenever we create a scaffold or any generator or any model, we have to run a migration and put it into the database. Because right now Rails is working with a language called SQL and a database called SQLite. And essentially SQLite doesn't know how to actually represent the database, so we have to tell it how. So we're going to create a table called posts with 2 columns called title and body and the timestamps. So if we actually run this command Rails DB migrate, when we hit enter, as you can see, it's going to do create posts migrating, and it actually adds the table into the schema. So as you can see now, we have a new file here called schema.rb, and if we go here, this is the representation of the database. We essentially have what our application is. So it says create table, post, title, body, and created updated app. So this is our representation in terms of the database. One thing that's very important about this file is that you never want to actually manually edit it. You always want to create migrations to handle this file. You can manually edit the actual migrations. For example, we could add another string here called like author, but if we add this we've already run the migration, so what we'd have to do is roll back the migration, then run it again. In fact, I'll actually maybe show you how to do that. So what we can do is we can just say Rails DB rollback, and then we can say step is equal to 1. If we hit enter, as you can see, what's going to do is basically just undo what we just did. Now if we go to the schema.rb, we don't have anything in here. And now what we can do is just run Rails DB migrate. Because we added that string in there, it's going to show up in the schema. If we go back to schema.rb now, as you can see, we have an author t.string in here. Alright guys, so now that we've done all that, let's run clear, and then let's run Rails S and start the server. Let's go to localhost 3000 and let's try and get something actually working. As you can see, our app has not changed a little bit. That's because we have to change the roots so that our roots actually goes to the post controller hashtag index. So in order to do that, we need to go to roots.rb. And by the way, I'm navigating via the control P command. So you can also find it in the config folder in roots.rb, or in VS Code, you can just say control P and that'll let you search. So inside of here, at the bottom in line 14, we can just uncomment root post hashtag index, and then we can save the file. And then what we can do is literally go back to the application, say refresh with control R. As you can see, now we have this post scaffold. So if you've never done this before, it should be really cool for you, because now we have this post scaffold and we can click first post ever, create post, and as you can see, post was successfully created. And this is the cool thing about Rails, because you're able to get up and running really quickly. So now I can destroy this post, I can edit this post, I can really do whatever. And this is the CRUD operations I was talking about. So as you can see, we're able to create a post. We just created this post. We're able to show the post, so we're able to edit it, we're able to delete it, and we're able to read it, because when we're here, we're actually just reading it. So that's the all 4 CRUD operations. Basically, the whole internet is basically just CRUD operations. So make sure you understand, memorize, and know how CRUD operations work. It's just simply create, read, update, and destroy. So there's 4 actions. And if we go to our controller, so app controllers, post controller, as you can see inside of here, we have a lot more methods, and methods are defined when we say def and end. The main ones are index, show, new, and edit. So index essentially acts as our read, create as our create, and update as our edit, and destroy as our delete or destroy. So that's how our Rails CRUD is working. So that's essentially scaffolds in Ruby on Rails. Now another thing that we can do is add a simple styling application. So what we can do is we can search up simple CSS, hit enter, and if we go here and then go to the bottom or get started with simple CSS, what we can do is grab this link here and we can put it into our application.html.rb. What is this going to do? Well, this is essentially going to style our application and make it look a lot better. So if we go back to our application into our VS Code and we go to the app folder, and then we go to views, and then we go to layouts and application.html.rb. This is a really special file, and you need to understand how it works. So application.html.rb essentially works by displaying the whole application inside of here. So essentially, it's going to be slightly difficult to understand, but try to understand. The whole application runs through this file, and any change that we make on this file changes the whole application. So for example, what we could do is we could add in this style sheet, and because we added it on this page, every single page in our application is going to have this style sheet. And as you can see, if we refresh the page, now we have a nice looking application, or at least a nicer looking application. And the reason for that is because every page is simply contained in this yield tag. If we get rid of this yield tag, our whole application is pretty much just going to go, because we don't have any yield tag. So pretty much our whole other application needs to be contained in the yield tag. Any page is contained in the yield tag. So that's really important to understand. So now that you understand application.html.rb, you understand the scaffolds, and of course we can go to our posts and we can go to our underscore post.html.rb, and as you can see, what's being displayed here is the underscore post.html.rb. The reason that I know that is because if we go to index.html.rb, we see div id posts, and for at post.each.do post, we need to render the post. Then we have a link to show this post. So as you can see, what that means is that for all of the posts in the application, we're going to create a do loop to essentially iterate all over these posts, and then we're going to render the post. And when we say render post, this is actually leading and pointing to this underscore post.html.rb file, and it's going to say link to show this post. If we comment out this render post by adding a hashtag before the equal sign, then what we are going to see is nothing on the homepage. We're still going to see show this post though, because we have this. So we're going to uncomment that, and then what we can do is we can just make changes to this so that we can say, for example, we don't need to say strong title, we can just get rid of that. And then where it says P, we can say that H is 1. We can change that to a H1 because that's better. So as you can see, now we have first post ever. That is slightly better. I'll change it to a H2 because we don't want it to be the same size as the posts here. Right, so now we have a simple application where we can create posts and I can edit them, so I can add the body. So I can add, this is the best description of a post ever. Also, I want everyone that watches this video to subscribe because I'm a hardworking guy. Perfect. What a good body. So we can update the post, and as you can see, now we have this little description here. So now that you understand a little bit about file structure, we're going to add our first gem, and it's really going to be the easiest gem to add and the easiest thing that we can do. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to a website called rubygems.org, and this is a website that hosts all of the Ruby gems, which are essentially just packages for the Ruby programming language, and we can use them in Rails. So the gem that we're going to be adding is called friendly_id, and this is a package that's going to allow us to slug our URL. Now what does slug our URL actually mean? Well, you'll see in a second. It's really important for privacy and SEO purposes. That's why we're going to do it. So we can just add gem friendly ID, and we can go back to our VS Code. We can search via Control-P to the gem file, or we can just find the gem file here. And then what we can do is we can just add this in as a gem friendly ID, save the file. But that's not all we have to do. Always remember, whenever you save the gem file, it doesn't really mean anything unless you actually run a command called bundle install. So I have to stop the server using Control-C, and then we have to run a command called bundle install. So now we run this command, bundle install, and as you can see, it's going to say all these gems installed, but as you can see, it says fetching friendly ID and installing friendly ID. That's because we just added it right there. So I hope you're with me so far. What we're going to do is go to the home page of this place, and if you didn't see where I just clicked that, it's in the links section and it's in the home page. Sometimes it's in the source code or in the documentation. You just kind of have to check all three, but you want to go to the GitHub so you can actually understand how to use the gem, right? Now for this tutorial, obviously I'm going to walk you through it, so don't worry about anything, but just try to take in as much as you can. So it says usage, add this line to your application's gem file. Not all gems are going to be as easy to use, by the way. This is one of the easiest. And then it says execute. So we have done this step already. And then it says add a slug column to the desired table. Rails migration add slug to user slug unique. So we're going to go ahead and do this so that we can actually slug our URL. So Rails migration, that's going to create a migration. We already had one experience with the migration. If we go to db migrate, we already have one migration here. So let's create another migration. It's just going to do this exact same thing, but slightly different. So it says Rails migration add slug to users. Now we don't have a users model, so we're going to change this to posts because we want to slug our posts, not our users. And the slug needs to be unique. And the reason the slug needs to be unique is because you don't want to have two conflicting URLs going to different places, right? That's not going to work. If you have a URL that's like /posts, you can't go to like a different URL. It can only go to like one method in the controller. It can't go to two different places, right? You have to have different URLs. So that's why the slug has to be unique. So we're going to hit enter on this migration. And as you can see, it's going to be created. And then we're going to say Rails db migrate. So then once we do that, we're going to go to the schema.rb, and as you can see, we've added these columns called slug, and we've indexed the slug, and we've done this to the posts model. So essentially this is going to allow us to change our URL so that when we go to our application and we say show this post, as you can see, it says post/1, even though my server is not started, don't worry about that. It says post/1, but instead what it's going to say is post/ the actual title of the current post. So that's a lot better for SEO and privacy purposes, because you don't want people to know how many posts are in your application, and you also want people to be able to search up the first post on your website and it actually shows up. So guys, now let's restart the server, and when I say restart the server, it basically just means run Rails S, and then we can go and follow the GitHub documentation some more. So let's go back to here, and let's say Rails generate friendly ID. So we're actually going to stop the server, run clear, and then say Rails generate friendly ID. This is just going to generate some friendly ID files, and then we're also going to run Rails db migrate, because as you can see, it created a migration file. So that's when Rails db migrate, and let's just check what it created back in the schema.rb. As you can see, it created a friendly ID slugs, so that's cool. And pretty much now all we have to do is go back to the documentation, and we need to edit the app/model/post.rb file as the following. So let's go and do that. So we need to go to post.rb, which is in app models/post.rb, and then we can just paste this in. It says extend friendly ID. This is basically like saying require friendly ID, use the friendly ID gem. Then we say friendly ID name use slugged. Now we don't have name as a column in our schema.rb for the post model, so we have two options. We can either add this column as a column in the post model, but that's just more work. So what we're going to do is we're just going to change this to title, because we want to slug the title. Okay, now that we've done that, all we have to do is go to the controllers and then go to the post controllers, and then inside of here all we have to do is go to set post, which is down at the bottom at line 62, and we can just change post.find to post.friendly.find, and once we've done that, our application is going to be slugged, and every new post that we create is going to use a slugged title for the URL. So just to verify this, I need to run the server again. So let's run clear and then just run Rails S. And the reason that I'm clearing is just to make it easier for you guys to see. You guys don't really have to clear, but I'm just doing it because it's a YouTube tutorial I want people to be able to see. So now that I have posts, as you can see, the server is working. And if I click on the show this post for this post, as you can see, it still says /post/1. But if I go and I create a new post, as you can see, I'll create the second post. I want everyone to like this video as well. And we're going to click create post. And as you can see, it says, if we go to the URL, as you can see, it says post/the second post instead of post/2. So this is really good for SEO and privacy purposes, as I've already mentioned. And yeah, so that's the first gem that we've added in Ruby on Rails. It was called Friendly ID. And yeah, this is your first experience adding a gem in Ruby on Rails. It's really, really good. Really, really cool. You're getting more experience with the framework. So you know how to create a post scaffold. You know how to add your first gem called Friendly ID. And the next gem that we're going to add is actually called Devise. And Devise is going to allow us to add user authentication into our application. So we're not going to cover the sign up, sign in links. We're just going to add Devise so that we cannot create a post or edit a post without being signed in. We're not going to make the posts actually come attached to the user. What we're going to do is literally just add Devise, so people have to sign in order to create posts. This is a beginner's tutorial, so I don't want to cover too much and reveal all of my secrets. But I do have loads more tutorials on my channel, so you guys can check those out after this one. And also, if you want more premium content, I have my own website called malakirails.com. And on here, basically, I have all of the premium content so that you can learn Rails 10x faster than I did. And as you can see, you can just go and you can click on one of these. And this is for pro users. So pretty much you just sign up for €15 a month and you get access to all of these beautiful tutorials. So that sounds interesting to you, go to malakirails.com. There'll be a link in the description. Alright guys, so getting back to the actual tutorial, let's go to Devise and let's go to rubygems.org again. And we're going to add another gem because pretty much this is how we add features in Ruby on Rails. We a lot of the time just add gems, not all the time, but many of the times. So let's search up Devise with an S, and that's why we say Devise, and it sounds like a Z, but it's actually Devise with an S. And so pretty much it says a flexible authentication solution for Rails with Warden, and this has 246 million downloads. So as you can see, it's quite popular. So we're going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to copy and paste this, and then we're going to go to VS Code, we're going to paste it in, and then we're going to save the file, and we're going to run bundle install, clear, and bundle install. So run bundle install. This is actually going to add the gem to the gem file and really just download the actual information for the gem. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to click on the home page so we can go to the documentation. And as you can see, it's made by Heart Combo. And if we go to the actual documentation where it says, if we scroll down a bit, it's going to say starting with Rails. Yeah, so we have bundle add Devise. So the first thing we need to do is run the Devise generator. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to run Rails G Devise install. So this is just going to add more generator files for Devise, similar to how we added them for Friendly ID, right? So Rails G Devise :install. So essentially, similar to how we added Friendly ID files, it's going to create some initializer files, whatever. As you can see, it's given us these 4 steps. So it says, depending on your application's configuration, some manual setup may be required. So it says, ensure you have defined default URL options in your environment files. So we've already done this by default, so don't worry about that. Then it says, ensure you define root URL to something in your config.root.rb. We've already done that because we routed to post #index, not required for API only applications. Ensure you have flash messages in your application.html.erb. So we can go ahead and do that now by copying these notice and alerts, and we can go to VS Code, we can go to application.html.erb. Then inside of here, what we can do is we can just go and we can say below the yield tag, we can paste these in. And now we're going to have notices and alerts in our application. And then we can say Rails G Devise views. And this is only if we wanted to actually edit how the views, like the sign up form or the login form, actually looked. But we don't need to do that right now. So now that we've done all that, we need to go back to the documentation and follow what it's saying. So we actually need to generate a model. So let's run Rails G Devise user. So this is going to generate a user model, which is the most common model you can create with Devise. And then we can just run Rails DB migrate. So let's run Rails DB migrate. So Rails DB migrate. What we can do is actually just run the Rails server and check if our application has changed. As you can see, it's not going to have changed. But one thing that will have changed is that if we go to user/sign_up root, if I go to user/signup, as you can see, now we have a sign up form. So that's pretty cool, right? And I can sign up here. But that's not very useful for us right now. What we want to do is make it so that when we create a new post, we can only do so when we are actually signed in. And so to do that, what we can do is make use of the before action. So it's actually not that hard. what we can do is go to app controllers, post controller. What we can do is go up here and we can say before action authenticate user, accept index and show. So GitHub Copilot completed the code for me. As you can see, it's 2025 now. Our jobs are going to be taken. No, I'm only joking. Anyway, but pretty much what we're saying here is before action authenticate the user. So make sure they're signed in. This is what this means. Authenticate user, it comes from devise, except on the index and show methods. So you don't need to authenticate them if they're looking for the index or the show method. So now that we've done that, we can go back to the browser, and if we refresh the page, as you can see, it's going to say login first. So then now, guys, we cannot create a post. We cannot create a post without actually signing in first. So I can try a new post. As you can see, it says login. I don't have an account. Sorry for my phone going off, by the way. I don't have an account, so I'm going to go and create account. So I'm going to say superuser@gmail.com, and I'm going to say 123456 for the password, 123456 for the password. These password character minimums can all be adjusted in device settings. We can say sign up, and as you can see, now we can actually create a new post because it says welcome, you've signed up successfully. So guys, that's basically how to add user accounts in device. And if I actually sign out now, there is no button to sign out, but we can actually just create one right now. So we're going to go to views, and then we're going to go to the posts, and then we're going to go to index. And inside of here, we're just going to add one above over here. We're going to say button _2, and then we're going to say sign out, and then we're going to say destroy user session _path. We can say method is going to be delete. So then, as you can see, now we've got the sign out button, and when we sign out, we've signed out successfully, and it's still showing even though we've signed out successfully. And so what we can do for that is we can say if current user, we need to say if current user. So as you can see now, now it's only showing if we are actually signed in. So if we're not signed in, we're going to basically just say link to sign in. So we're going to say link _2, we're going to say sign in, or in fact we'll say sign up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say new _user _registration _path. And then now that we've done that, we can just say that, and as you can see, now we have a sign up link. So we have a sign up link, and when we actually do sign in, we can log in, and then we can say 123456 123456, and then sign up. As you can see, I've signed up successfully. I'm just going to sign out, and then as you can see, now I can create a post, obviously, and then now I'm just going to sign out, and as you can see, I've signed out successfully, and now I'm going to click on sign up, sign in, and now I'm going to go and enter my superadmin1@gmail.com, and then with a password of 123456, log in, and as you can see, I've signed in successfully. So guys, this is the absolute beginner tutorial that a guy on YouTube wanted me to make. I forget his name, but I'll get it for you now. So yeah, pretty much 13 hours ago, this guy called Amal wanted me to create a tutorial, as you can see on screen now. Please upload a tutorial on Ruby on Rails for absolute beginners. So now I've done this, and here is your tutorial, mate. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you actually watch it. Right guys, that is the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, hit subscribe. Also check out malikirails.com. You might want to support me and also get access to my premium tutorials and videos and courses, and you'll also get access to all the source codes, so you don't have to buy each codes individually. Guys, subscribe if you like this video, like it as well if you like this video, and comment if it helped you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.